Hello everyone, it's me, One Gamer 54 by video. Today, we are watching, we're going to be reacting to Food Theory. Why Food Theory again? Well, simple. Because we're going on the road. Apparently, there have been 2 episodes already, so I figured, why not? And look at the title that you're reading. Can we grill food on a car engine? This only spells disaster from here. So, you know what? Without any wasting time, just sit back, relax, grab some popcorn, and we're just gonna see how this Fury on the road goes.
I messed up. I really messed up. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Food Theory on the Road, a first-of-its-kind series that'll have me hitting the highways, frequenting freeways, and strolling streets. And what better way to kick things off than to answer a question I'm sure all of us have asked ourselves at one point or another. Can I cook a steak on my engine? It makes sense. It gets hot in there. It saves you from spending money on Slim Jims every time you have to stop to pee. Honestly, it's a slam dunk if it works. And if it doesn't, well, I'm sure it wouldn't be too hard for a bearded man waving uncooked meat in the air to hitch a ride from a kind stranger, right? In case you're wondering what's got me packing up my car to do this, I am moving from Los Angeles, California, all the way across the country to Miami, Florida. And instead of flying there, taking a nice, easy 5-hour flight, relaxing, and just kicking up my feet, I have to drive because of my beautiful ball of anxiety that I call a dog. So as I'm making my way downtown, driving fast, faces pass, and I'm homebound, I'm going to be stepping outside the comfort of my recording booth to see what theories the open road has to offer. At the end of it all, I won't just reach my new home, but also a special someone that I'll be cooking something up with, using knowledge that I've gathered from my road trip. And because doing weird, borderline dangerous things for the sake of FoodTube is apparently just my life now, what better way to start this road trip month off than by cooking our meal right on my engine? I mean, let's face it, I've got timelines. I've got to get places. I can't always wait in line at drive-thrus, and I can't afford to be spending hours at restaurants when I've got to make it across the country before the heat death of the universe. So, what I'm going to do is wrap a couple of steaks in aluminum foil, and we're gonna plop them right here on this bad boy, and hope so badly that our car doesn't break down. Hopefully, by the end of it, have some lunch to eat. So, let's get started. What I'll be specifically cooking is 3 thin, sliced bottom round steaks and a side of green beans, because eating your veggies,
you better share the steak with the dog,
is important for a balanced diet. So where the heck do we put them? Well, when you pop open the hood of most modern cars, you'll see a tightly packed and organized freaking labyrinth of machinery. You have your fluid reservoirs, belts, pulleys, and a bunch of stuff that doesn't concern anyone but Vin Diesel for this episode. What we're focused on is what gets the hottest, and that is the engine. Most car engines get to temperatures between 195 and 220 degrees Fahrenheit. That's more than enough for cooking some thin slices of beef, but unfortunately, it's not that easy. If you got curious and decided to mosey on over to your car to check your engine bay, you may notice that your engine is covered by a big old plastic hood. And there's a good reason why you shouldn't remove it. See, engines really are a feat of, well, engineering. And they're carefully crafted with valves, intakes, coils, all things that need to move in the correct way and order, or your car will not work. So if I were to stuff a big old slab of meat in there and it jostles around the second I hit a speed bump, I may end up stuck in the middle of nowhere. And that is how horror movies start. So in lieu of getting axe murdered, I decided to place the stakes on the plastic hood. This is less than ideal because instead of direct contact and heating, we're now dealing with indirect contact and heating through the air. This is what's known as convection, where the heat is carried by a liquid, or in this case, air, to warm something up. Most ovens use this method to cook.
I know this is not going to work at all.
Closed system like ovens,
my man's going to eat raw meat.
Air constantly flowing in from me going at a responsible 75 on the highway, which stops the engine bay from getting too hot, or just hot enough in our situation today. That said, my hypothesis is that we can offset the lower temperature by driving for a longer time. And wouldn't you know it, driving across the country just so happens to have super long drive times. With just about 9 hours in our first stint, it'll serve as a perfect phase 1 of our experiment. We've got our wheel down on the engine. Time to close this bad boy and hope that from here to our next stop, we don't break down, we get some food, and we don't get food poisoning, because we're on the road, and that's bad news bears. So let's take this down. They closed. Help. Luckily, my car was was not only able to start, but drove perfectly fine. It didn't stop me from holding my breath and cringing at every tiny bump in the road, though. While the steak started to hopefully cook, let's dive into the science of cooking meat. When it comes to beef, it cooks in roughly 5 different stages as the heat increases. For our purposes today, we're only going to be focusing on the first 2 since we're dealing with lower temperatures. The first stage is the denaturation of the proteins. Like we discussed in the egg on the sidewalk episode, when proteins reach a height of heat, they denature, meaning they physically change their structure. In beef, the major proteins, myosin, actin, and collagen, are tightly wound in their natural state. But when you apply heat to them, they start to unwind and relax. It's basically the same as coming home from a long day of work, kicking off your shoes, letting down your hair, and cozying up on your couch. When this happens, the meat becomes a lot more tender. It also happens at the lowest temperature range, between 104 and 140 degrees Fahrenheit. The next stage is the melting of fat, which happens between 130 and 140 degrees. It's on the upper end of that protein denaturation, which is why I opted for the cut of meat that I did. The round, or the rear of the cow, is a fairly lean cut, mainly because it's the muscles of the hind legs and rump, which see a lot of activity for movement during the cow's life. This means that there's very little fat, and more importantly, little intramuscular fat, or the fat within the cut of meat itself, not just around it. Since we need to keep the cook temperature as low as we can because of the cool air flowing in, removing as much fat as possible sets us up for success. Because it's so lean, the round is the perfect cut for slow cooking. And, well, this is gonna take a while. Okay, so we have been driving now for about an hour since we put the meat in. We're about to pull over. At this point, I'm kind of wondering if enough heat has transferred into the meat for it to be safe to
I'm
eat.
curious.
We have to wrap it up in the aluminum
I'm
foil
scared too.
quite a bit. I'm assuming it would take more time for the heat of the engine to then go through the metal of the engine, the plastic top, and then the aluminum foil itself. The hope is when we pull over, we pop this hood, and when we unwrap it, we'll see not a seared steak, but at least a relatively cooked steak. The trick with all of this is it's essentially steaming the meat as opposed to actually searing it and getting that color that we're used to getting. So that is the only unfortunate side effect. We are going to get very gray looking meat. But I don't care about the color, I care about whether I can eat it. So
I don't recommend if it's all gray.
And then we'll do an update. I know that a gray blob of meat isn't the most attractive thing in the world, but there's a lot more than just color to the doneness of beef. The color mainly comes from yet another protein in the meat called myoglobin. As that particular protein denatures with heat, it turns more and more brown. This is what causes the visual differences between rare, medium, and well done. But that's the interior. The exterior can vary depending on how you cook the steak. If you don't hit it with high direct heat, you won't get that Maillard reaction that gives that nice brown crust, and you'll end up with something that looks a lot more gray than anything else. But that doesn't mean it's not cooked through. So when we pop the hood at the next stop, a gray meat isn't necessarily a bad thing for us. It's a moment of truth. We made it, which is honestly the most important part. I count this episode as a win just by making it here. So let's see. Oof, there's definitely some heat. Oh wow, it actually didn't move around. I don't even know where to start. Let's unwrap one of the steaks. So it's quite warm.
It's gonna be hot.
It feels tender. Ooh, juicy, juicy. That is nowhere near cooked enough. We ended up driving, I did make a mistake. I said we had been driving for an hour. It was 2 hours. So, this might become an issue. The true difficulty here is not being able to tell the exact temperature inside the engine bay as I'm driving. But it's only been 2 hours. We're just gonna have to take it low and real slow. I'm about 2 energy drinks and 4 hours later. Let's see if this meat has started to cook. Ooh, that discoloration is not looking good. I mean, it's definitely a medium rare right now.
Oh, come on.
That, my friends, is what we call cope. That was not nearly cooked. My brain was more cooked than that meat. It definitely needs another... I don't even know how long at this point.
Did you eat it?
6 hours. 6 total hours of driving. Luckily, this country is vast and we have nothing but time. I'm really scared to see what's under here because in the last, I don't even know how many hours of driving, we've been hit with no less than 2 rain patches, and I have a feeling that that's cooled down the engine a lot. Let me tell you, when you heat meat up just enough and then cool it down and don't keep heating it for hours and hours and hours, it's a breeding ground for bacteria and bad things. Here's hoping. Oh no. And there it goes. Oh, Yep, it's starting to discolor. It smells nasty. The rain
Oh.
has cooled down the inside of this way too much. It's just turned. I gotta close it up. Oh god, I gotta close it up. Oh god, it's dripping. This was an unequivocal failure. This is just dangerous to eat. I'm not even gonna try.
Don't.
We'll throw that out in a second. Okay, so back to the drawing board. There are two variables we need to figure out. One, finding out what temperature we're dealing with while we drive and cook our steaks. Two
No.
is a bit trickier, and that's making sure that the steaks get a thorough cook. Now, originally, we went with a lean meat because fat takes a higher heat level to render and would therefore make it harder to heat the whole thing up to the right temperature. But intramuscular fat, or the marbling you see on those fancy cuts of meat, can actually help baste the meat from the inside as it melts and cook it more evenly. So by avoiding large chunks of fat that we would otherwise need to render down all the way and sticking to fine marbling, we should be able to have it melt over a long period of time and cook the steak a bit more thoroughly from the inside out. Counterintuitively, this means going for a thicker piece of steak. So hopefully the fat difference can make up for the added thickness. You know what the definition of insanity is? Doing the same thing over and over and over, expecting different results. And that was almost what I was about to do. I was gonna wake up the next day and say, you know what, I'm just gonna throw some more meat on there and keep hoping. But I realized that would have been wrong. Instead, what I did was wake up, go on Amazon, and get myself the secret key. A Bluetooth meat thermometer. So now we have our new and improved steak that has much more intramuscular fat. Hopefully,
This
when it
is gonna be
renders,
crazy.
it'll actually help
It's
cook
not
the
gonna
steak
work on
a
this
little
one, is
bit
it?
quicker, and we'll have the meat thermometer to know exactly what temperature it's getting up to. So let's go. By the way, there was a hilarious side effect to all of this prep that was going on for this experiment that I did not take into consideration. I've had no less than like 3 people come up to us and ask us, hey, are you good? Because they see a person with their car parked, their hood up, and naturally, like a normal person, they assume, ooh, they might be in trouble. Their car might not be starting. I should go and help them.
Yeah.
Well, good Samaritans, when they come up to me and I tell them, no. This is what I do. I'm making steak. They just back away very slowly. With the new steaks tightly wrapped up and ready to cook, it was time to finally get some real numbers and a real idea of what kind of heat we're dealing with. We're driving on Easy Street now, or so I thought. Friends, theorists, my buddies, pals, I cannot begin to describe the level of frustration that I'm feeling right now.
Boy.
First of all, it's raining again. Luckily, it's still hot outside, so I'm hoping that patch of rain didn't really do much. But second of all, when we went to check the internal temperature using the app, using the meat thermometer that I had shipped to me on the road, we realized that it specifically says not to wrap the probe in aluminum foil, which is exactly what we did. And because of that,
Dang.
we had no stupid readings. That's okay, because we're about to get to a rest stop in about a half an hour, and we're gonna get down, and we're gonna pop the hood, and we're gonna see 2 wonderfully cooking steaks, and they're gonna be delicious.
I hope so.
Take it away, VO-me. So, while I cry for half an hour, let's see where we're at so far. After phase 1 was a complete disaster with roughly a 9-hour drive, having only 5 hours left for the following stint did not spell success for us. So instead of doing as many stops as we did for the first part, we decided to only do 1, hoping that by splitting it up in just 2 checkpoints, 1 in the middle and 1 at the end, we'd keep the cook disruptions down to a minimum, since we only had a little over half the time. The idea was that with a meat thermometer, we'd be able to keep an eye on the temperature without having to stop. That was a dud, but we kept the format in order to give the meat the best chance of cooking. Moment of truth. Can't remember which one has the meat thermometer in it, so we're just gonna feel around. Ooh, it is hot. I'm feeling it. We're 2.5 hours into our 5-hour drive for today. So I'm hoping to see this about halfway cooked. Come on in here. That's what I like to see. We're starting to see it start to brown, and finally, we're getting the read. So we're at 104. We're halfway through. So we want this to read about 125 for medium rare. So it's only 20 more degrees that we have to go, and we have 2.5 hours left. Finally, something is working out for us. I'm not gonna let this lose too much heat. I'm gonna wrap it back up, put it back there, and we're gonna get going. 2.5 hours left. We're halfway through. I really think we can do this. Things are finally looking up.
Ain't no way this is actually
In a fraction of
going.
the time as the first day, we started to see a lot more color in the meat, and you could clearly see the fat on the edge of the steak starting to melt, which means that we were at least getting to the lower range of that 130 to 140 that we needed. It's not all good news though, since we have about 20 degrees to go. But without
Dang.
knowing the exact thickness of the steak and the exact temperature in the engine bay, we can't calculate just how long it'll take to raise the steak by that much. Especially because as the steak heats up and gets closer to the ambient temperature in the engine, the heating will slow down. This is what's called Newton's law of cooling and heating. The bigger the temperature difference, the faster the change. But the smaller the difference, the slower the change. And to add the final nail in the coffin, we're dealing with cool air constantly being introduced into the equation. But with constant driving for another almost 3 hours and the fat helping us baste the meat, we might just make it. It's time to see. I have my handy dandy meat thermometer
Come on,
thing
moment
that'll
of
tell me
truth.
the temperature. It's warm, I'll tell you that much. All right, let's see. If we see a magical 125 there, that's it. And that is not it. 109. So in 2.5 hours, it went up another 5 degrees. I mean, I kind of want to cut into it. It doesn't look raw in the middle. It looks like it's not raw anymore. You know, it's tender, it's meaty, it doesn't taste good, but for being unseasoned and on my engine for 5 hours, it is actually cooked inside. This is at a temperature,
Wow.
and it's been at a temperature where it's rare, but it's not unsafe. I'm gonna call this a win. This is way better than the sidewalk bacon and driveway egg. I could slap this on a plate right now and eat it. And honestly, considering I just drove 5 hours, I might do just that. So, take it away, VO-Me. Luckily, none of you have to wonder if that questionable meat did me in, because here I am, standing proud and victorious with barely any stomach rumblies and having conquered the engine cook. It only
Really?
took multiple days and hundreds of miles, but thanks to the tried and true low and slow method and some good marbling, we finally did it. So, what does this mean for you? Well, unless you're planning an extremely long road trip, engine cooks might be out of the equation. But if you are planning a slow cook, then don't shy away from the flavor machine that is the intramuscular fat in your meat. And no matter what you do, don't let your meat endure multiple rainstorms, or you'll never get that smell out of your nose. But hey, that's just a theory. A food theory. See you on the road. And
Alright, that's gonna be it, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see, we see episode 2, I Tried a McDonald's, run by robots. So that's gonna be an interesting video that we will probably get on reacting. But anyways, guys, that's gonna be the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like the video so I know you guys enjoy. Comment down below what do you guys think. I feel like this, I genuinely felt like it was gonna be disasters on this one. And the first half, it got me, to say the least, yes. But apparently, feasibly you can do it. But for me, I recommend don't do it. Just don't do it. Don't risk having your car, break down in the middle of the road. Especially not in the dark woods. That's a horror movie to start. But anyways, guys, make sure be sure to subscribe. We're trying to upload daily. This is OneGamer54 signing off.